Hello. How's everyone doing? Really excited to be hosting this panel for corporate innovation. We all know what happens when corporations choose not to innovate. You know, we have Kodak, Blockbuster, and many other corporations that didn't get ahead of the curve, and they're pretty much dead in the water. So let's talk about how corporations innovate, and I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think are the biggest challenges right now with corporate innovation?
So,
David.
yeah, let me jump into it right away. It is wonderful that corporations die. They should to have a speedy ability to experiment with new ideas is not something that we should be worried about. We should care about people, and corporations are not people. Now, of course, all of us associate ourselves with brands and things that are done in a certain way, so we are not able to embrace a frantic pace of innovation to the degree that we could and could even be beneficial. That is why a lot of times we sacrifice future benefit of a faster innovation in order to protect incumbent interests. And oftentimes in many industries that can be actually measured. Today, in more and more places, solar photovoltaics is the winning, cheapest, and of course, most environmentally friendly energy source, but still the incumbent oil industry receives trillions of dollars in subsidies while still feeling pressure from the unstoppable force of innovation that is going to win at the end. So what corporations can do is to recognize that innovation happens elsewhere. And that is what they are doing when they are investing in startups. But even that is a kind of a mixed blessing, because corporate venture capital underperforms when compared to more neutral, independent sources of investment. So I don't envy large corporations because they have a hard time keeping up. Sometimes they are able to turn around. I was, for example, very surprised of Microsoft becoming cool suddenly again. Who would have expected that? But on average, I am certainly much more in favor of startups that grow up and then become corporations themselves, as for example it happened with Google, that now is having a hard time being loved by so many people in so many ways.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Do you, Yosef or Brad, do either of you want to add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brit. It's okay.
Go ahead, Brad.
Okay.
Brad, you're up.
All right. I was just gonna say it's to build up on what David was saying. It's the Titanic effect. As businesses grow, same with any other organization living in non, it calcifies. You get a structure that's used and defined, and it becomes very difficult to change that. And larger the corporation, slower the speed of change, which is in direct contradiction with a startup where everything can change daily, and nothing needs to be broken down or necessarily permissioned or revisited, just because there's no such skeleton structure that's been there for a long time, which is why most of the very successful companies, unicorns as often referred, are startups. They're brand new businesses, because those are the ones that are able to keep up with the breakneck speed of innovation these days, compared to businesses of industrial revolution and that are incumbents, as David put it, but they're not able to incorporate change as quickly as a new startup.
That makes a lot of sense.
And
Yosef,
to kinda
did you want to add to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, with pleasure. One of the reasons, like, I'm in Israel, and every single week you have at least 2 or 3 unicorns here that are literally exiting every single week. And the funny part is that you see that most of those guys, they were fired from their previous jobs because in their R&D department, their idea sucked. And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go start my own. And you see this is happening, and you're like, wait a second. As a boss, as an R&D manager of this particular person, you're saying, wait a second, this idea came to me first. I could have, go through the bureaucracy and so forth and find a budget for him to develop this idea. And I would have a unicorn and I would, literally contribute to the company. But because you have bigger the company gets, harder it is to manage. More bureaucracy you have to put in place and more systems have to be in place for the management to be easy. And therefore they have to miss out on innovation because otherwise their core businesses would simply collapse. You know what I mean? And absolutely. Yep. So that's what's happening. And that's why, come again?
That just brings me to another point. Some of these corporations, they acquire, smart startups, and that helps them innovate as well. And that's something, I know, David, you had an idea about the acquisition of these companies. And maybe, yesterday when we were talking, you mentioned blockchain technology and using that to kind of govern these corporations and make it, make the process a little more streamlined. If you care to share, I think that could be really interesting for the audience.
Those of us who have been in the world of Bitcoin and blockchain for a long time have had the chance of absorbing many facets of new ideas that are included in this wonderful jam of a technology. Because too many people concentrate exclusively on the exchange rate between Bitcoin and the US dollar or whatever other financial application. One of the interesting opportunities that we have with blockchain technologies is to improve the consensus mechanisms that have driven human societies. And today we have two, both extremely hierarchical, that are dominating. One is the representative democracy, where through elections in our societies we are pretending that we can have politicians who have the answers to our needs, rather than being addicted to money and power, and then being surprised when we are electing people who prove to be monsters of one kind or the other. And in corporations, we have similarly hierarchical structures where a board of directors appoints an all-knowing CEO that can make no wrong decision until he or she does, and then gets fired and replaced by the next demigod. So the opportunity that we have with blockchain is to really overcome the limitations of these extremely naive approaches and to activate participation by people who are able to really improve the opportunity they have to contribute to the collective wisdom of their peers and vote with their money, where the voting tokens guide for example, to be more specific and answering more specifically your question, guide the selection of certain ideas within the corporation, of certain startups in which the corporation may invest. And these governance tokens can be of many different kinds. There can be all kinds of different designs, but the end point is that the outcomes are much more nuanced, much richer, more transparent, more accountable, and similarly to how in marketing and PR, social media completely eroded the limitation of what is inside and outside a corporation, this kind of approach really blasts open the doors for participation by supporters of all kinds. It doesn't matter whether they are formal employees of the company, they can join and they can help wherever they are.
That's a really cool idea. I like that a lot. That brings me kind of to this thought of, we're seeing these big corporations, well, they're big now, invest their balance sheet into Bitcoin. I'm curious if any of you guys have thoughts on that, because it's definitely pushing the market up, the monetary value of Bitcoin. But what do you guys think about Tesla, MicroStrategy, and Square and other companies, big corporations now, starting to invest their balance sheet into things like Bitcoin? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Yeah.
It was expected because a lot of the large corporations have an asset portfolio that they need to manage and hold in their treasury, whether it's fiat currencies or stocks of certain suppliers, subsidiaries, whatever the cementing relationship is. And Bitcoin in the past 12 years or so has proven to be a cyclical, highly volatile, but still reliable mechanism to preserve and increase value. So as we start this year, where a lot of industries are ruined by economy and a lot of sovereign economies are ruined by the pandemic and are spending never before seen budgets to sustain their economies and sustain their people that cannot work because of the pandemic, Bitcoin is still 21 million Bitcoin total, and it's not going to increase. There's not going to be an external shock that changes that number, or the emissions, or the difficulty of mining. All these things are programmatically built in. So from an investment strategy, if you look at Bitcoin and look at it like, okay, it has 3-4 year cycles, and so far has had a never before seen value increase in any asset class that I'm aware of. You look at it and it makes sense to have some exposure to it. Now, of course, those corporations and venture funds have very deep portfolios and a lot of cash. So when we hear, oh, such and such business bought hundreds of millions of Bitcoin or billions of Bitcoin, they don't have a huge exposure to it. It's a very small portion of their overall total assets and treasury that they're putting into it. And the upside is so high that, I think it's a sound decision that more and more sovereign funds, institutional investors, and large corporations are going to do. Is it, wise to put all your investments and everything in Bitcoin today and try to live off of it? I have a couple friends who do it and they're very happy, but it's not for the faint of heart, and it's definitely not a corporate treasury management strategy that I would recommend.
Interesting. Do you think it's a signal that maybe other corporations might be wanting to build with this technology? Because as we know, everyone on this panel has been in the blockchain space for quite a while and knows that Bitcoin is not just a store of value. It's a platform that you can build off of. I'm curious if you think that, maybe now, it's kind of like you said, the economy, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a ton of money being pumped in through the Fed, which is creating higher inflation. So we're seeing, weird things like companies put billions of dollars into Bitcoin. But is there also kind of, the next wave? Do you think there'll be companies that are going to be building on the Bitcoin blockchain or other blockchains? Because now they're like, okay, this is a store of value. I'm curious to what your guys' thoughts are there.
I'll
say
jump in
something.
really quick, and then I'll
Okay.
let Yosef go. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, bro.
I mean, there has been corporate interest in blockchain since early 2012-ish era, with very big names that had their own internal labs, and it's only growing with more adoption. Sorry, Yosef, I'll let you go.
First of all, just going to comment, we all know that Tesla will never buy Ethereum because it runs on gas, right? So they will never go ahead and do it. But nevertheless, that said, you have so many different layer one protocols out there, right? That are just designed, with all due respect, Bitcoin, let's put it this way, right? If you compare it to gold, right? Gold, it's not really the most used asset other than jewelry. And, you have rhodium, palladium, and all those other metals that are much more, they're much more for technical uses. They're much more important, right? They're much more utilized. And the same thing goes, and you have all these projects out now, all these different layer one protocols that are doing, layer twos that will give them, seamless ability for a regular PHP programmer to be able to write code, and they won't even know that there's a blockchain behind it. Why? Because it's in the language that they actually are seeing. As an example, Polkadot and the Parachain, and there's a project called Kilt. That's what it's all about. You know what I mean? That's what they're bringing out there. And that's why I think it's amazing, because people are making too big of a deal about blockchain. I talk to people and you say blockchain, everybody says, oh my God, blockchain equals complicated. Well, in reality, that defeats the purpose of blockchain, because blockchain is made for it to be easy, you know what I mean? And slowly, when people are going in and realizing what blockchain is all about, you have right now, a friend of mine just won a contract with the government of a particular country in Asia they don't have the best election system, let's say, in the world. They won a contract to build for them a blockchain-based election system, as an example, right? And you have all these different methods, and it's easy. And when people realize that you don't need to know how to, build websites for you to be a user of internet, all right? That's when people realize that you don't really have to be, confused in order for you to use blockchain. You just can benefit from it, and you won't even know. It just connects to regular ERP. And if the engine is based on blockchain or some other thing, who really cares, right? So we're getting there, I think.
I would like also to add maybe unexpected example of corporate utility of Bitcoin and blockchain. 10 years or 12 years later of it being born, we are still, of course, and very naturally explaining it for the newcomers. And until 8 billion people will be completely familiar with it, we know that that is our destiny, so we never complain. One of the profound misunderstandings around Bitcoin is that it wastes energy, where people don't realize that of course, the traditional financial system absorbs an enormous amount of energy very inefficiently. One. Two, that the benefit of the consensus and trustless ability to transact that Bitcoin delivers worldwide is unparalleled, and many, many others. Now, one thing that Lorenzo Vallecchi illustrated beautifully just a few days ago, as we speak today, in an essay he published on Medium that I strongly recommend everyone to check out and hopefully read, entitled Bitcoin and Energy in the Next 50 Years, is the strong interdependence of the development of the two networks, the forthcoming new energy infrastructure that is going to be built on decentralized renewable energy systems, mostly solar, and the large number of data centers that are going to be popping up everywhere in the world where people will want to manage them. And the application here is that since the pure cost of energy is going to progressively tend to zero, energy utility companies will need to deliver additional, very, very different services, value added to the mere existence of the network, and the ability for mining to be turned off as needed, because maybe the utility will pay the miners more than they can earn from Bitcoin mining itself. Because at that point, the pure cost of electricity is not even zero, is negative, which is already happening, is something that has never been possible before. And this is just one very interesting example of how Bitcoin and blockchain in general will contribute to stabilizing not only financial markets and the ability to trust anyone or to transact with anyone without trusting them all over the world, but actually they will be stabilizing our energy network of the future as well.
I just wrote it down. I'm going to read that Medium article, Bitcoin and Energy. Thank you. I think that's a really cool. This is a little bit off topic, but there's probably people listening that want to know, they feel like maybe they missed out and they didn't get in early enough, because now Bitcoin, as you know, is trading well over $50,000. So I want to hear from one of you. What do you think, like, for the people that haven't, that aren't the no coiners with no exposure, is it too late? Did they miss out?
No, they did not.
I'd love to hear from Brad. Yeah.
No, they did not. I think one thing that I hope everyone takes from this panel that maybe they didn't think about before, because there are no coiners, is you can own a fraction of a Bitcoin. So you can buy $1, $1 worth of Bitcoin. You don't have to buy whole Bitcoin. So the fallacy that, if the price is X, I can't afford it. This is not a car. It doesn't come in one piece, it comes in Satoshis that are very small fractions of it. And the second thing is, my experience has been very interesting, especially with Bitcoin, where I just out of pure luck got involved really early on. And early on, there wasn't much to do other than mine and send Bitcoins around that had no value. And so although I really appreciate that experience and learned a lot from it in helped me understand blockchain and crypto assets in a different way than maybe someone coming in this year. I really didn't benefit from those activities of early days, just because it had no value, and some keys were misplaced, wallets lost, and a lot of Bitcoin went down the drain. Having said that, it was still a really good journey for me, because it got me introduced to something really exciting. And although it didn't have value at that time, now it does have a lot of value, and it changed the way I thought about how to decentralize things, whether financial systems or monetary systems or social structures, and how to bring more stakeholders into the conversation. To what Yosef and David were saying earlier on, we do have imperfect consensus models right now. And I'm not saying every blockchain consensus model is perfect and should be adopted throughout our lives, but it's a much better, much more inclusive system. So I think it's never too late to get in, especially this early. This is, people who came into the internet era in the 2000s, they weren't late. They were, they learned from the mistakes of the 90s, and in 2000s they built bigger, better companies like Google. So we're gonna see the same thing with Bitcoin. It's gonna come in Bitcoin blockchain. It's gonna come in waves. Obviously, there were the original, early adapters, and then there was the wave in 2016, 17. Now we're seeing a more corporate and institutionalized wave in 21, probably 22, and each wave has a different characteristics, but it's never too late. Just find projects that you want to see happen and get involved.
For those people who are skeptical about blockchain in general, what I ask them is, do you believe that we will be mining the asteroids with swarms of robots in 20, 30 years? And if we do, whatever transactions in energy, transportation, economic settlements they will need to make autonomously, because there will be very few humans pushing the buttons, are they going to use wire transfers, credit cards,
David.
or paper checks or banknotes in order to do those transactions? And it doesn't matter whether it is called Bitcoin or Ether or whatever, but it's guaranteed that they will be using something that is built upon the foundation that we are laying down now.
So this makes a lot of sense of why Elon bought all that Bitcoin then, you know, because he's going to need. Go ahead.
I just want to add one more thing, guys. I don't know. I read it today from Glassnode that was published that there's only 36 million addresses of Bitcoin with a non-zero balance. So that means that there's 36 million wallets out there that have at least one Satoshi. Guys, what happened to 8 billion people? Like, seriously? Is that even a question? 36 million and it's at 50 grand?
Yeah. It reminds me, you know, back when Bitcoin was like $10,000 and all of my friends were asking me about Bitcoin and blockchain, and they felt like they were too late, so they didn't buy any. And now they're coming like, I should have, because I was like, buy it. You're not too late. You're very early. Just buy, you know, $100 worth and just get some exposure.
That's right. I have friends emailing me, oh, that wallet that you you know, opened for me, or actually I received some transaction detail from you in 2014. Do you have my password?
Oh man, I have a question for Brad, because you did mention you're a really early adopter. What attracted you back then? You know, when Bitcoin had no monetary value, you were essentially just mining for the sake of, you know, contributing to this network, and ultimately, you know, this might hurt, but you lost a fortune. It's very publicly known. But you're still, you know, that doesn't matter. But I'm curious to what attracted you particularly to the technology when there was no monetary value. Now we know why people are attracted to it. Well, one of the reasons besides the technology is they want to be able to, you know, hold a store of value, and for the monetary sense.
So even before Bitcoin, I always loved cryptography. I was passionate about it. As a programmer, I liked disassembling things and looking inside, and oftentimes they were protected, so you can't do it. So it was you know, it was a fun time to be had, getting into those places that you weren't supposed to, and look into the code. And so in 2009, a friend of mine, another technologist, sent me 3 files to compile and said, Brad, compile these and you're going to love it. I figured he's either going to take control of my computer, play a prank, or it's something interesting. So I created a virtual layer on one of the computers that didn't have anything important on it, compiled the things, ran them, and one was a full Bitcoin node, the other one was a wallet, command line interface wallet, and one was a miner. And so I started tinkering with it, just intellectual curiosity, to answer your question. I had no expectations. I hadn't read the Bitcoin white paper until I compiled and looked at the name of the, you know, software that popped up. I didn't even know it was Bitcoin. I just did it. And it was the beginning of a life-altering journey. So I'm forever thankful to him. But it could have as well been a virus or a prank or something that took control of my computer and you know, shut it down. So that was the genesis. And then, of course, I read the white paper and got really interested about the transactional aspects of it, and the rest, you know.
That's amazing. Well, awesome that you were able.
I don't know if
Go ahead.
the screen that I started sharing automatically shows up or
Yeah, we can see it. I know I
okay.
can. Yeah.
Probably then it can be seen outside as well.
Yep.
So uh, April 2011 is when I tweeted, Bitcoin P2P virtual currency, I wish you good luck and good fortune against the ire of nation states everywhere. Okay? Now, I sold this tweet as an NFT a few days ago, not for $69 million, like the auction of digital art that happened at Christie's today, for Beeple and his work, and absolutely that is worth much more. But if any of you want to make an offer to Stefan, who owns the NFT of that tweet, he said that he would potentially consider selling it, or not. You know, it's up to you guys now, because it is now off on his own trajectory, as an autonomous contract on the Ethernet blockchain.
That's actually a great segue, David, to NFTs and wrangling it back to corporate innovation. I think there's going to be incredible touch points between NFTs and corporate innovation, just because early on we've seen some gaming, applications of NFTs like virtual items, pets and such. And then now art is very collectibles, and art is very strong adopting NFTs, but we haven't seen a lot of corporate applications, process applications for those. And, I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of different ways NFTs can speed things up in the corporate world as well.
Well, the one application I'm familiar with is the NBA has NFT collectibles, and just like people trade baseball cards, there's a scarcity to them, and these are going for like $20,000. The NBA is obviously a big corporation, but I'm curious of what you guys think of another way corporations would innovate with NFTs. Definitely the hot topic. David?
So we are very much at the beginning, and Brad and I, and I'm sure Yosef as well, have gone through waves and waves and waves on top of Bitcoin and blockchain, of people coming up with all kinds of ideas, colored coins, dApps. Brad is laughing because he remembers them, right? So the ability of experimenting with ideas and then running with those experiments is a beautiful characteristic that corporations must embrace. And they must also embrace the guarantee of failure that goes with that mentality. And they must understand that the value of the human talent that is able to come up with those failing experiments is so high that they should refrain from punishing them because they failed. That kind of instinct is the opposite of what should happen. They should be celebrating. And I was actually amazed when a few years ago I was invited to give a keynote at a very large 80, I think, billion dollar electric utilities yearly meeting, where they were flying in people from all over the world who were selected because of their best failure that year. And there were a couple of dozen people, and out of those, I don't know, 2 or 3 were chosen as the best of the best, and they were all not still sure whether they would be fired. But it was amazing. And of course they were not. And this electric utility is working very hard in order to improve their ability to innovate. They have a CIO, which is not Chief Information Officer. It is not even Chief Innovation Officer. The CIO is Chief Innovability Officer. So is our ability to innovate increasing? And if yes, then he keeps his job. So I think that is quite amazing that a company as large as that, and by the way, it's NLENEL, one of the leaders in sustainable energy today. So that is an example that I have fun telling anytime I can.
I mean, we hear that in startups, right? Fail fast and fail often. But corporations tend to not take that kind of mindset on. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that, David. So I'm curious about what you guys think are the most exciting new innovations that corporations just can't ignore this year. And, it's obviously been an interesting year starting off, right? We're still in this global pandemic. So innovations are kind of moving and shifting because of that. And I'm just curious to hear from you guys what you think will be the biggest innovations for corporations this year. Yosef?
I personally think that this year we will actually start seeing how more and more big names and Fortune 500 companies, they're going to come out of the closet and actually say how they're using blockchain technology for themselves. They have too many pilots that are running. There's too many bureaucracies that are going on. Too much, just hush hush. They're like once again. But I think that very, very soon we're going to start seeing that, because if last year we all know the COVID clinical trials, right? We know the little secret why they happened so fast. It was, of course, there was all this warp speed and everything, all the programs going on, but people don't know that the data was transferred from stages to stages using blockchain technology. So if before it used to take them from one place to go to another place, all right, it used to take them a week, they got it done in 5 minutes. Why? Because they did blockchain technology. Now, believe it or not, the person is a friend of mine that actually developed this technology for one of the big 3 pharma companies. He signed an NDA about size of this, of how he's not allowed to say the name, and it's like sort of like selling his soul just for him to give that out. But they're afraid. Why? They're afraid of this, to say that, hey, we're using it and we're doing it. So I think that blockchain and the different applications of it, people are actually going to start come out of it, and they're going to start showing it how it's actually beneficial in the real life scenarios. And that's what I think is the 2021's innovation for corporate.
I love that.
One category that is under mortal threat, which is always a useful way of looking at innovation, what it is going to disrupt are middle managers. And especially this year, when they couldn't justify their existence by walking behind the backs of people who were doing real work, and everyone was at home, and their productivity actually increased because they were able to concentrate, and maybe they were even working longer hours. They wouldn't waste hours every day commuting. Well, middle managers had to take a step back and ask deep philosophical existential questions about their professional trajectory. And even more so, once again, back to the issue of blockchain-based governance, the ability to make decisions that are unfiltered and disintermediated has always been the aim of blockchain technologies. So applied to corporate culture, it will actually unlock a lot of talent that was wasted in mere supervision of other humans that are grown adults and are perfectly capable of supervising themselves. And so there will be a lot of new opportunity for corporations to internally redefine what should they do with all of that previously wasted human talent that they used to be calling middle management.
I think we're all biased towards blockchain, of course. I think blockchain and crypto assets are probably the star disruptor again this year. But I want to focus more on the DeFi side of things, because DeFi, or decentralized finance, has grown considerably since its early on mentions in 2018, 2019. Now in 2021, I think more people have access to financial products and yields and returns on their money that they never had before, just because they weren't big institutional investors. And I think that disruption in the financial markets is pushing some of the very large traditional players to take blockchain seriously, and not as a holding asset as in Bitcoin or Ethereum, but also in the way they shape their future products, because now they need to appeal to a generation that wants everything on the go, that wants everything on mobile devices, doesn't want to go into a broker's office or a bank, to tell her to do anything. And DeFi is allowing these newcomers to offer those services and products to them directly on their devices. I think that's democratizing access to these financial products and really disrupting the banking and finance industry.
I'm glad you mentioned DeFi, because it's definitely, you're right. Like it's a huge innovation for the blockchain space and for the financial space. I'm curious if you're willing to name maybe a few of your favorite DeFi projects and talk about it a little bit. No worries if not.
Favorite DeFi projects. Well, I'm biased. I'm about to launch a DeFi project, so it's still stealth. But when it comes out of stealth, you can go to equify.com and check it out. But there are some good foundational projects like Synthetics, like Compound, Aave, that have set these are earlier on projects that have reached billions of dollars in market cap and allow certain very traditional intermediary middleman bank governed products to be decentralized. And of course, one of my favorite ones is Uniswap and SushiSwap. That Uniswap built up on Bancor, which is a project we supported. I still do. It's an amazing decentralized exchange that's out of Israel too, from Yosef's neck of woods, and they took that and built it into this DeFi ecosystem on Ethereum. That's very exciting. So Equify is spelled, David is asking, EQIFI.com. Awesome. But yeah, there's some really solid structural foundational projects right now that support the DeFi ecosystem. And then of course people take different components. They take a yield product here, maybe a liquidity pool there, and combine it and create their own products to offer, which is, again, historically never before seen. Even in the digitization of banking age, it took banks years to come up with new products. My background is in banking and finance, so I'm familiar with the processes and the difficulties that these big institutions changed. And now you can take DeFi products and, like a puzzle, just combine them on a website and create your own package that you like, with the risk profile you like and the yield and the returns you like. And it's fascinating. It just blows my mind.
It is. What do you think the biggest threat to DeFi is? Obviously the banking sector is the biggest in the world. Like it's the biggest sector in the world, right? We're talking about trillions of dollars, and then you have things like cryptocurrencies and blockchain that want to disrupt it, and which are, we're at the, like we said, we talked about, we're at the very beginning of that. But what do you think the biggest challenge will be for these? They're small on the scale of global banks, right? So what do you think the biggest challenge will be?
I think it's twofold, and I'd love to hear fellow panelists' ideas on this too. But one is regulation, of course. You can always overregulate and kill any innovative idea, which has happened several times in the past. And the second is sloppy programming. When you're creating a financial product that's programmatic and you're not really respecting the amount of value it can store or transact with, you're opening, the floodgates for all the hackers, all the brilliant minds who don't want to be productive in a way that contributes to the society, but they want to be productive in a way that self-enriches. And it's been the biggest, plague of DeFi, where contracts and code that's not ready to be public is released, and then funds are lost.
Yosef?
Yes, it's first of all government regulations and the lobby that is giving so much money to the politicians all over the world. It's a big challenge because DeFi is taking a big chunk out of their profits, that's for sure. And it's only the beginning. It's only the beginning. That's a very big challenge. And another challenge that I think happens is that, unfortunately, the ecosystem, it needs more trust involved. And I'm proud to say that, there's a few projects in the stealth mode that my team is also working on right now together with, that are there only with one purpose, is to create more trust, to make sure that, certain protocols that claim to be doing certain things, and they give the auditor sticker that, these guys are audited and these guys are good. Companies that will be able to secure the ecosystem even more, to make sure that there's places where people can fall back onto, just in case somebody hurts you. And there's a few startups that I'm also in the stealth mode that they are right now that are being developed. And this is their mission, is to create that ecosystem of checks and balances within the DeFi ecosystem. And it's something that we're very, very happy and proud of, and very excited to share it with the world very soon when we have all of our, when we'll be able to do that already.
The demonstration that the system is broken, really, of incumbents and regulators trying to pretend that they are doing their job, is demonstrated by the fact that the largest fines are actually against the biggest banks that are unable, unwilling, or criminally negligent in using the regulations that they very hard lobby for. When they build the teller windows big enough for the Mexican cartels to push cash through faster, or when they are in other ways misusing funds, or when auditors sign off on the books of companies like Wirecard, and a few months later they go belly up with the missing of 4 billion euro, that evidently was an amount not big enough for the auditors to see that they are missing.
Like Enron.
Or Enron in the energy sector too, or many others. Now, the biggest threat, as I see it, is that not only change is accelerating, which many of us have been already seeing and talking about in so many ways, but actually the rate of acceleration is increasing. The best example in this is artificial intelligence, where Stanford University published a report 3 years ago that rather than doubling every 2 years, as with Moore's law our computers have been doing for 50 years, they were seeing for the past 10 years AI doubling in power every 4 months. And just 6 months ago, the CEO of NVIDIA at their yearly conference announced that NVIDIA sees AI doubling in power every 2 months. So the rate of doubling went from 2 years to 4 months to 2 months. And I published a few years ago what I call the paradigm of jolting technologies. And you can go to jolting.co and read about it more in detail. But the point is that while we are able to adapt to the changes that come with an ever-increasing speed due to a constant acceleration, we have a very hard time adapting to the whiplash that a jolt will produce. Just as in braking too fast, you can actually hurt yourself, and then you have to wear a collar for a few weeks because you got a physical whiplash. The whiplash effect manifests itself also on our psychology. And those of us that are unable to adapt or are pushed beyond our limits of adaptability find themselves without the tools for literally interpreting reality around us. And that is, at least in part, the reason for so many people to fall prey to fake news, superstition, conspiracy theories, because they are rational. They have an innate need to find rhyme and reason in the world. But when they are ill-equipped, they will latch onto systems that are not conducive to their own well-being. So whether we are individuals, corporations, or the world at large, improving our ability to rapidly absorb new information and to adapt to their implications is of a fundamental existential importance.
Thank you, David. So we're just wrapping up. We have like 8 more minutes. I'd love to hear, Yosef, if you wouldn't mind sharing your thoughts on blockchain and innovation, or anything really. If you just want to go ahead and
Sure.
have the stage, it's yours.
I thank you very much for that. Just in a nutshell, I think that the world on the philosophical level, right? I think that we're slowly getting more and more and more ready to accept the good that is coming out of, blockchain, decentralization, all of these different things. I think that finally, the fake democracy story that we were told all along since growing up, where they limit us, I think that we're getting to a level where actually we can go to a democratic society, and not a democratic society that's not really a democratic society, just you're told it's a democratic society. And I strongly believe that, what we needed was the challenge. And COVID created us challenges in this world. You had so many people who were left out of work. You had so many people that had to, basically go out of business, had to, face challenges. And that's what creates the opportunity for innovation. That's what creates the next generation of people that said, wait a second, I got laid off. I was doing XYZ, but now I'm no longer able to do the XYZ. Wait a second, what this blockchain thing is all about? And then you have this new generation of people that are learning the blockchain. And the difference between 3 years ago and today, the amount of brain power and the quality of brain power that's involved in the blockchain technologies and how to innovate it, how to make it better, it's so much more amazing. Yet all these people that were thinking that blockchain was Bitcoin, that they're realizing that blockchain is a world of its own, and Bitcoin is just the AOL.com of blockchain. That's basically it, And they're realizing it slowly, and the amount of ideas and, the requests that we're getting of people that they have ideas, they're like, listen, guys, we're thinking it like that. What do you guys' thoughts are? And we're like, this is genius. How come nobody that we know that, and we're in the blockchain already, 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, how come we didn't think of that? And then you
Brad,
realize,
am I wrong, or Yosef just told us that we are stupid because we are in blockchain for too long? I'm joking, Yosef.
I bet you money that any single one of these people that are getting it today would trade places with you. $50,000, 50,000 times would trade the places with you just to be there beforehand. You know what I mean? But the reality is that, and you have all these new people that are coming in with innovative ideas that are challenging the limitations that we set for ourselves because we accepted a particular dogma for ourselves. And we saw that this was not possible. I'll be honest with you guys. You guys talked about NFTs. When was it? In 2017 when they created CryptoKitties? I remember I laughed so hard that my stomach was aching for 2 days when I first heard that there's CryptoKitties that came out. I'm like, come on. Now, oh my God, it's like a world of its own that's, ERC721, thank you very much for everything, right? So the idea is this, that as the world becomes more and more ready, I think that more and more people are coming into this together with us and giving us this fresh look that we already don't have this fresh look anymore. Why? Because we're used to certain things. Our head is in a tunnel. We know things, but that's about it. So all these outsiders, that's where the key innovation in blockchain is going to come from. So that's the...
Fresh eyes.
But
Fresh
do you
eyes.
have the unicorn rainbow kitty yourself?
Come again?
Do you have the unicorn rainbow kitty?
What's that one worth, Brad? Is that like $1 million?
I'm sure a
kitty?
couple hundred Ethereum.
I
don't know.
Easy. Yeah, those were the days. And imagine this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, right? Our great grandkids, they're going to be living in this world and we'll be like, yeah, there was a time when there were crypto kitties and they're like, wait a second, it's like so, so last century, right? So that's what it is. Absolutely.
Yosef, I will be happy to be there with your grandkids and my grandkids in 21 anything, right? Because if they say this is so last century, that means we are in the 22nd, and I am happy to be there with you.
You give this generation enough time, they will figure out how to change the calendar and fit it into blockchain. So they'll create a calendar centuries of their own, The fast is the way they move, it's unbelievable, right?
Great, guys, this has been really fun. I think we have just 2 more minutes, so feel free, Brad, if you want to say a few words before we head off. Go for it.
I'm sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having us. Great panel. Thank you, David. Thank you, Yosef. And I think corporate innovation is going to adapt to being able to move faster. Corporate innovation didn't happen for decades up until this new century, and then now they're forced to innovate multiple times a year because of blockchain, because of AI, because of machine learning. I mean, we love blockchain and we're in it, but blockchain touches everything. The same way AI is touching everything. Soon we're not even going to realize that there are components of AI in the tools we use, but there's going to be. I mean, cars are one example. We're not talking about self-driving, but a lot of the things that your car does now, braking, collision detection, things like that, didn't exist 10 years ago. So I think, those that adapt to whether it be a blockchain disruption or other technology are going to keep growing. And obviously acquisition is their preferred method. Instead of inventing anything, those large enough keep acquiring. PayPal just acquired a big
Curve.
Yes, Curve, a big finance, crypto finance platform. So they're coming in, and I think if acquisitions speed up corporate innovation, I'm all for it. If they can't innovate, let's have a lot of good startups all over the world create the new solutions for them and get acquired for billions of dollars, and that's good for economies and founders and big corporations. So everyone wins.
I opened saying that corporations are not people, but I want to contradict myself by inviting corporations to dream as if they were people. Because by dreaming and sharing those dreams and being ambitious, dreaming in impossible dreams that become reality, that is how they can bootstrap themselves into the future.
That's a great note to leave things on. You guys, this has been amazing. Thank you all for joining, and I think we can wrap it up now. So have a good day.
Thank you very much for having us.
It was an honor
Thanks,
to be here with all of you guys.